Hey everyone, Robin from Backscatter here, and in this video we're rounding up the best mirrorless cameras to use underwater in 2021. They're called mirrorless cameras because there's no optical viewfinder like you'd find on an SLR. Instead, you work directly from the LCD screen or a high-resolution electronic viewfinder. We're really excited about the mirrorless camera category because all of the camera manufacturers have been putting their latest, best tech and features into these smaller and smaller cameras. We have a lot of cameras in this category, so our entire crew and our in-the-field photo pros have been diving all of these rigs to find out which is the best for underwater photography. Here at Backscatter, we help thousands of customers all over the world figure out which camera is best for them. The number one criteria for most of our customers is price and working within their budget. The mirrorless range of cameras starts at about $650 for an entry-level camera and goes up to as high as $6,500 for the pro-level stuff. You can get into some less expensive options with compacts and GoPros, but they're just not as feature-rich or as cool as these mirrorless systems. Now, price is a pretty easy, straightforward criteria to work with, but then there's also performance. We help a lot of our clients by asking them, first and foremost, whether they're more of a photographer or more of a videographer, or somewhere in between. While all of these cameras can shoot both photo and video, some are better suited for photo, while others are better suited for video. We're gonna break all of the info down in such a way that by the end of this video, you should have all of the information that you need in order to know which one of these cameras is gonna be the best camera for you for your next dive trip. We're gonna start off with a very quick summary of our top picks among 4 different categories: the best all around, best for photo, best entry level, and the best for video. We'll do a super fast overview of the top picks in those categories right now, and then we'll spend the rest of this video going on a deep dive of not only the top picks, but also the runners up in each category too. If a particular camera sounds like it's right for you in the quick summary, feel free to just jump straight ahead to that section of the video afterwards. So first up, we have the best all-around full-frame mirrorless, the Sony A1. The A1 is hands down the absolute best performing camera of any type to shoot both pro level 8K and 4K video and 50 megapixel high resolution photos. But this much dual roll capability does not come cheap at $6,500 for just the body alone. At that price, the A1's gonna be way too much camera for a lot of folks. If you're more into just having the best camera for capturing photos, full frame is really where it's at, and that's where the Sony a7R IV comes in. The a7R IV sets the bar for the best photo quality and resolution we've ever seen from any full frame camera with a super sharp 61 megapixel sensor. It comes in at a more affordable price than the A1 at only $3,500, though it does fall a little short in the video department, which is gonna make it the best tool for purely shooting stills. Now, understandably, the a7R IV might also be priced way too high for your budget. What's been hugely popular recently is the Olympus EPL10 because it's significantly smaller in both size and price. We call this camera the best bang for your buck in underwater photography, and it's one of our picks for the best overall camera of the year. The camera and the housing kit include everything you need to get started shooting underwater at an entry-level price of $650 for the camera with the included lens and $650 for the limited edition Backscatter Octo print housing. This rig isn't that much bigger in size than most compact cameras, even when it's fully kitted out in the housing. It's also priced less than most advanced compact cameras along with their housings. We really like that this camera can be shot like a compact with easy to use conversion lenses, or like an SLR with interchangeable lenses and ports for a ton of versatility. The entire rig fits easily into a carry-on bag or backpack, and it's also incredibly easy to learn, even if you're not at all familiar with underwater photography. Anyone that's either looking at or coming up from a compact camera should seriously consider the EPL10 as a much more capable mirrorless alternative. But all that being said, there's a lot of us out there who are just way more into shooting purely video than photo. The Sony a7S III is the best mirrorless video rig available. It records high bitrate 4K 120p footage with beautiful ambient light color in a run and gun ready rig that's a fraction of the price of a cinema system. The lower resolution 12 megapixel sensor isn't going to be turning any heads for photo shooters, but that's fine because it's the excellent low light performance and the powerhouse video specs that set the a7S III apart. So we took all of these mirrorless cameras out there and we boiled it down to these top 4 so that no matter what you're into, one of these cameras, or maybe one of our runner-up picks, will be the best camera that you can have for about the next 4 to 5 years. Keep in mind, our top picks are the best all-around choices while trying to take into consideration the needs of the widest group of users for both photo and video. Depending on your individual shooting style, your subject interest, your shooting goals, and what lenses or other gear you might already own, one of our runner-up picks may be a better option for you than one of our top picks. If you have any questions by the end of this video, just reach out to us directly and we'll be happy to help. So now we're going to take a deep dive into each of these cameras, as well as the respective runners-up in each category. Feel free to take a look in the description, or you can check out the time codes here, and you can jump straight to the camera or category that seemed the most relevant to you, or if you're a true nerd like us, you'll just stick around and geek out with us over the whole video. Also, don't forget to check out the companion article to this video on backscatter.com for even more info and more sample images. You can find a link to that in the video description. The Sony A1 is a highly diverse camera that can do all things and do them well. It's not only the best all-around mirrorless camera, it is, in our opinion, the best all-around camera, period. That's not to say there aren't some things that other cameras can do better. Ultimately, that list is pretty short and the differences aren't very major. High resolution, fast shooting, and great image quality are typically hard to pull off all in one package. It used to be the case that a high megapixel camera was also pretty slow due to the amount of data that it had to process. It wasn't that long ago that the bar for high resolution, fast shooting was 40 megapixels at only 5 frames per second. The Sony A1 pulls off a whopping 50 megapixel image at 30 frames per second in continuous shooting with outstanding image quality. This spec doesn't just raise the bar, it blows it away. It's not just the speed and the resolution that's impressive here. We've also seen Sony majorly improve the image quality produced by their high-resolution sensors. This is most evident in the 61 megapixel A7R IV, which produces the best overall image quality that we've ever seen, and we'll come back to more about that in just a minute. While the noise and the dynamic range of the A1 will fall just shy of what the A7R IV can do, that small trade-off is offset by the blazing fast speed that the A1 possesses. When the similar Canon EOS R5 was announced, the 8K movie mode was the most head-turning spec to come out. However, in practical reality, there is some limitation to its use due to the overheating on the R5, which also occurs when shooting in 4K 120p. The Sony A1 also shoots in 8K, but without any practical limitation on overheating for an underwater shooter. While that 8K 30p spec may be the eye-popping headline, 4K 120p is actually the more practical and actually sought-after spec. Being able to shoot in 120p and then slow your footage down to half speed while still having 60p footage is what allows you to create both that dramatic slow motion while preserving that lifelike natural motion blur. Custom white balance at depth underwater had previously always been the Achilles heel of any Sony camera for video purposes, but now we've seen Sony make seriously massive improvements with their last few camera models. Canon has always been the hands down best option for white balance in the past, but now Sony can perform just as well with the A1 and the A7S III. The A1 will easily white balance at over 50 feet without the water turning magenta like it did around the 35 to 40 foot mark on older Sony cameras. This performance is basically the same as what you get with the Sony A7S III, which is our pick for the best video camera. The fact that the A1 handles that ambient light white balance color at depth just as well solidifies its choice as the best all-around mirrorless camera. The autofocus accuracy success rate for photos is pretty much perfect. The autofocus tracking has actually improved over the excellent performance found on the A7R IV with quicker, more accurate tracking and a one-stop improvement in low light conditions. Basically, the autofocus works like this. There's a focusing square in the center of the screen that, when pressing the AF on button, will focus on the subject in the square, and as long as that AF on button is being pressed, the camera will track the movement of that subject through the frame and update the focus continuously. If you put that focusing square on the eye of a subject, either by moving the focus point around or just moving the camera around to put the square over their eye, then you press and hold the AF on button, the camera is going to track the eye of that subject. Flash sync speed is how fast you can set your shutter speed while still being able to fire your strobes too. The traditional flash sync speed limit is 1/250th of a second, but the A1 pushes this limit up to 1/400th, which is something we really haven't seen before from a full frame camera. We use shutter speed in underwater photography to control the background brightness. So being able to make your shutter speed even faster to darken the background when shooting in bright environments is a really helpful advantage. By making the bright background darker, we are effectively increasing the appearance of the brightness of our strobes. Consider that other full-frame cameras like the Canon R5 and the Nikon Z7 II both have flash sync limits of only 1/200th, so the A1 at 1/400th will give one more full stop of exposure range over what those other cameras can do, equaling one full stop of additional strobe brightness in your shots. So that's pretty awesome. Choose the Sony A1 when you need just one camera that can do it all. We really cannot overstate that this camera is truly groundbreaking when it comes to doing it all and doing it extremely well in one package. Shoot both high resolution stills with excellent image quality at blazing fast speeds and professional quality 8K and 4K 120p video with great looking white balance color without compromise other than the steep price tag of the body alone. The general rule of camera sensors is that when resolution goes up, the light gathering capability goes down. This is due to smaller, more densely clustered pixels just not being able to gather as much light. This is going to increase the noise level of the image and also results in diminished low light performance. When the previous model of this camera, the A7R III, came out with a 42 megapixel sensor, it was the first of its kind to have such high resolution without compromising the image quality despite the more tightly packed sensor. Even with an almost 50% increase in resolution at 61 megapixels, the A7R IV doesn't have any increase in noise or decrease in dynamic range detail over the A7R III. It'll produce huge, sharply detailed images like no other camera before it. You can even crop a vertical composition from a horizontal shot and still come out at over 26 megapixels, which is more than what most other full-frame cameras can do. The color of the still images look great right out of the camera, and the dynamic range is among the best of any camera that we've tested. This is the absolute best image resolution and quality that we've ever seen from any full-frame camera. 10 frames per second continuous shooting with 61 megapixels of resolution is really good. While the A1 might be faster at 30 frames per second, that is only a 50 megapixel image, so those seeking the ultimate resolution and quality from the A7R IV will be compromising a bit in terms of the ultimate speed of shooting. The real-time autofocus tracking on the A7R IV marked a major leap forward in autofocus performance for Sony cameras. This camera can easily compete with the Nikon D850 SLR in terms of the best available autofocus out there. The newer A1 actually has even better autofocus tracking than the A7R IV does, thanks to some more recent performance updates. The autofocus performance and the operation is basically the exact same on the A7R IV as we covered for the A1. Just point the square in the center of the frame at what you want in focus, hold the AF on button to track it. There's no need to use any other focus method, no matter what you're shooting. The previous model A7R III had improved ambient light custom white balance over earlier models, and this same new level of white balance accuracy carries over to the A7R IV with really no noticeable changes. It has 3 available custom white balance banks with an easy access and a simple execution process. The white balance on this camera performs best at shallow depths and looks really good in bright ambient light conditions, but really only up to about 45, maybe 50 feet deep. Around that depth, all of the water in the background really tends to shift towards a more magenta hue that becomes more difficult to pretty much impossible to correct during editing, especially the deeper you go. The A7R IV is also limited to only 4K 30p video, so if you want slow motion playback potential, you're gonna have to shoot in 1080 HD. Serious video shooters should instead take a look at the A7S III and the A1, since they both offer updated white balance performance and the ability to capture natural looking colors at depths in excess of 70 feet, as well as significantly higher resolution and faster frame rate recording options. If you're looking for the ultimate still image quality and the biggest resolution, and if only 10 frames per second continuous shooting is fast enough for you, there's really no other camera to look at than the Sony A7R IV. The only weak spot on this camera is its video, which really won't matter to you if you're only using it to shoot photo. The Canon EOS R5 produces the best still image quality to date from Canon, and it's easy to use your existing Canon SLR lenses with the control ring adapter. The video and the ambient light white balance look absolutely fantastic from this camera. The ambient light color at depth is the best among all cameras in this review, but that great video is also where the R5 has some holdups. The much talked about overheating issues when shooting 8K or 4K 120p is just too much for the camera to handle in an underwater housing, even with the typical short clips that underwater video shooters tend to do. The heat builds up over time and it only dissipates to a certain extent during a typical 90-minute surface interval. This isn't to say that you can't shoot 8K or 4K 120p video. We did in our sample video clips, but the heat has to be managed by turning the camera off between clips to allow the camera to stop building heat. The R5 does have Canon's signature ability to produce the best looking, most accurate, natural, vibrant ambient light color with a manual white balance at depth. Even when shooting past 70 feet, the colors look super great straight out of the camera. The struggle that we face with the R5 is the fact that the process to capture that white balance color and then assign it as the video white balance is a serious chore compared to other cameras. You can't set the white balance in video mode, so you have to switch back to photo mode, capture a photo for the white balance, go into the menu, assign that as the custom white balance, then go back to the movie mode, select that custom white balance, and then hope it's good and accurate, otherwise you get to do that whole process over again. Now sure, the results are ultimately worth the effort, but they come at the price of that process that's much, much longer and way more convoluted and requires way more control activations compared to any other camera in this review. This is the best image quality Canon has ever put out, and still shooters won't be disappointed with the R5. While the video results might be truly awesome and among the best looking from any mirrorless camera, at the end of the day, between monitoring your air, your decompression limits, and just trying to figure out where the heck your buddy is, having to manage a clunky white balance procedure and an overheating camera just become two more things to manage on a dive. This is why we recommend the R5 for Canon photo shooters with just a minor interest in video. The Nikon Z7 II comes in at 45.7 megapixels and shares the same sensor as the original Z7. It'll produce the same resolution and image quality as the first one, which is just fine since the Z7 took some amazing photos. The Z7 II gains a faster processor that allows for 4K 60p video, a faster 10 frame per second continuous shooting in stills, and a larger shot buffer. The camera body is quite small and lightweight for a full frame camera, making it great for topside shooting. The Z7 II is the only camera in this review to go down to an actual ISO of 64, allowing for more dynamic range detail by preserving the highlights while maintaining low noise in the shadows. The autofocus is improved in low light over the original Z7, though anyone with previous experience with a Nikon SLR and the awesome 3D autofocus tracking will be a little disappointed to learn that the autofocus system is completely different and unfamiliar on the Z series, though it does still work great. The Z7 II has a limited ambient light white balance range, maxing out around 35 to 40 feet in depth. Just like the other cameras in this review that face this kind of shallow limitation, this is just too shallow to be considered a serious practical choice for hardcore video shooters. That being said, the shallow video color looks good, and the white balance procedure is easier to execute than a Canon, so casual video shooters can still get some great clips above 40 feet with ease. Those of you that are seeking a budget-friendly full-frame photo rig should take some notice of the Z7 II, since it is the least expensive full-frame camera in this review at just under $3,000 for the body. It's going to be best for primarily Nikon photo shooters who only have that casual passing interest in shooting shallow video. This is the best bargain of the bunch, and it has some really good image quality, excellent autofocus, a super sharp high-resolution viewfinder, and the kind of dynamic range detail that only a native ISO of 64 can deliver. That being said, if you're a dedicated Nikon shooter looking to get serious underwater, the D850 is about the same price and isn't that much larger when fully kitted out for underwater. It still has an ISO of 64, but it also has a faster flash sync speed of 1/250th, a better autofocus system, and slightly better overall image quality. The Olympus EPL10 with the backscatter octo housing is our favorite system for striking an ideal balance between value, high-end performance, and simple ease of operation for even first-time underwater photographers. What makes the EPL10 so entry-level friendly is that it's every bit as easy to use as a compact camera, but it has a much faster shooting speed, a larger sensor for way better image quality, and a lower overall price tag than most advanced compact cameras and their housings. The kit is $650 for the camera and the lens, and $650 for the octo housing. They include everything that you need to start shooting underwater right away, which is why we call it the best bang for your buck in underwater photography. Anyone out there who's shopping for a compact camera should take a seriously hard look at the EPL10 as a substantially more versatile and powerful mirrorless alternative. One of the unique features of the EPL10, among other cameras in this review, is its ability to use the included kit lens along with a wet mount conversion lens to retain the ability to quickly swap out your lenses just like you would on a compact camera, but with the added advantage of having much better ultimate image quality and shooting speed thanks to the larger sensor and processor. More advanced shooters can take advantage of the ability to use interchangeable lenses to get performance that's similar to other high-end mirrorless cameras and SLR cameras at a mere fraction of the overall system price and size. Use an 8mm fisheye lens for super wide subjects and split shots, or use the 60mm macro lens to get 1-to-1 magnification of tiny subjects with a more comfortable focus distance than by just using a wet mount conversion lens alone. You can even stack a macro wet mount conversion lens on top of the dedicated macro lens for an even more magnified view of super macro critters. While the sensor of the EPL10 may only be half the size of a full-frame camera, the image quality produced by it is more comparable to that of a full-frame mirrorless camera than that of a compact camera. The smaller sensor on the EPL10 allows for a much smaller camera body, making the EPL10 feel more like a compact than a full frame, which we love for entry-level ease and a smooth transition from the experience of shooting with a compact camera and housing. This is basically the same thing. There's also a significant increase in the overall shooting speed when compared to a compact. The LED flash trigger in the housing, which is fired via the hot shoe connection on the camera, allows for rapid fire shooting. Some other compact cameras like the Sony RX100 series and the Panasonic LX10, both of which are some of our favorites, don't even have a manual flash option, leading to a super slow recycle time in between shots. The EPL10 completely eliminates that speed restriction. The EPL10 produces satisfyingly sharp image detail and crisp resolution. Whether you're shooting backlit sunballs or black background macro, the results across the board were excellent and among some of the best from current generation micro Four Thirds sensor cameras. The results are comparable to other cameras like the Panasonic GH5 and Olympus OMD EM5 Mark III. When compared to the popular compact Olympus TG6, the larger sensor of the EPL10 creates much sharper image detail, better dynamic range, and lower noise in low light situations. Given the relatively minor size increase of the Olympus EPL10 body, the user gets all the benefits of a larger sensor, higher end camera without adding significantly to the overall weight or underwater system size. Autofocus speed is snappy and accurate in both wide angle and macro. Whether you're trying to track a moving subject through the frame or you're locking onto the eye of a close-up critter, the camera does a great job of sticking the sharpest part of the frame right where you want it. The controls can be configured to enable back button autofocus operation. By separating the focus control away from the shutter button, we gain a huge advantage over compact cameras, and that really is what allows us to take the next step towards more advanced mirrorless and SLR-like camera control as opposed to compact camera style control. You should consider the EPL10 if you're looking for your first underwater camera, if you're planning to upgrade from a compact camera, if you're seeking a budget-minded rig with good image quality, or if you want a complete system that can still travel easily in just a backpack or carry-on roller bag. There's simply no better way to get a more capable, all-in-one box, ready-to-shoot rig for this little money, and the upgrade possibilities are plentiful. Do we even have to mention this is basically the coolest housing ever? You could think of the Olympus OMD EM5 III as an all-around, modestly upgraded Olympus EPL10. It has more resolution, faster shooting, an upgraded autofocus system, better image stabilization, faster maximum shutter speed, an electronic viewfinder, and a bigger body with more dedicated and customizable controls and functions. It's a very nice camera, but it does come with a higher price tag and a significantly larger system size when put in an underwater housing. While camera geeks and pixel peepers are sure to nerd out over the extra features and performance, the end result is an image that just isn't light years ahead of the EPL10. We still think that most people that are coming up from a compact camera are going to be more impressed by the combination of small size, performance, and value that make the EPL10 so great. The Sony a6600 is the flagship model of the 6000 series of mirrorless cameras from Sony. The 6000 series has a larger sensor than the micro Four Thirds size from Olympus and Panasonic, but it's still smaller than full frame. This makes the image quality from this camera top-notch and on par with that of a Nikon D500 crop sensor SLR. There are some limitations with this camera, with the two biggest being related to the flash. The internal flash is TTL only, with no manual option. This results in really slow shooting while waiting for the camera's flash to recycle when using it to trigger your strobes. This can be overcome with some compatible housing models by either using a flash trigger or a hardwired electrical sync circuit. The second flash issue is the relatively slow flash sync speed of the shutter at 1/160th. That means you cannot use a shutter speed faster than 1/160th if also using a flash, which is really limiting when shooting in bright ambient light conditions, like in shallow reefs or trying to line up a sunball shot. Every other camera in this review has a flash sync speed of at least 1/200th. If you're after the best possible video quality from the smallest possible rig, the Sony a7S III is what we recommend. This is the best mirrorless video camera available. It can directly compete with cinema and pro level video rigs in terms of the bit depth, resolution, and frame rates that it can capture, but the overall rig size and price are both significantly smaller than your traditional cinema system. The max video spec is 4K at 120 frames per second at 280 megabits in a 10-bit 422 color space. If you're a video nerd and already know exactly what that means, congratulations, and yes, it's awesome. But if you have no idea what those specs mean, they basically break down as being able to shoot in ultra high resolution with the ability to slow it down to half or quarter speed playback with enough data behind that footage to allow for a ton of range to adjust your exposure and color during editing. On top of that, the a7S III can record this hefty video to an internal memory card. In the past, video specs like this required at least a large external recorder or at most a much larger cinema camera rig. While the Sony a7S III lacks being able to shoot in resolutions above 4K, in the end, we think that really doesn't matter. What everyone should really want is 4K 120p footage that can be slowed down to half speed when played back in a 60p video sequence for both the slow motion effect and the smooth effect of 60p playback. Or you can always go even crazier with up to quarter speed playback on a 30p sequence. When shooting in 4K 120, there's no overheating issues on the a7S III like you would find on the nearest competitor to this camera, the Canon EOS R5. With such a high bitrate and color depth, the files coming from the Sony a7S III have a much greater range for color grading and adjusting exposure during editing than any previous model did. Shots that appear totally underexposed with no detail left in the dark shadows can be boosted and brought back up in post with a surprising amount of detail being recoverable and not much noticeable noise. In an extreme poor visibility test, we had an original clip straight from the camera displaying shadows in the foreground that seemingly had no detail left. This same shot had the shadows boosted and brought back up to a much more usable level of detail. The great low light performance is thanks to the low resolution 12 megapixel sensor. While this sensor isn't going to get any photo shooters excited, and it doesn't have the resolution required to record in 8K, the trade-off is that it's going to produce way lower noise and much better low light detail than a higher resolution sensor. Sony has their own color profile called S-Log that allows for even more dynamic range detail in a shot. It works by basically boosting the shadows while preserving the highlight detail in camera. The end result is a more flat image with way less contrast. This is what's actually preserving that dynamic range detail up to about 15 stops worth. Video shot in this S-Log profile has to be color graded to get the correct final color, contrast, and look. For most underwater shooting scenarios and most folks, just using a normal standard picture profile is really close to what your final S-Log edit will look like, and it's going to be sufficient for most shooters without the need to do any extra color or exposure work in post. In real-world performance tests, Sony is previously fallen short, and sometimes really short, of being able to execute that most important task of a manual white balance underwater for wide-angle ambient light video scenes. As we've said many times before, a camera can have all the best specs in the world, but if the video color is bad, then nothing else matters. The massively improved white balance on this camera captures beautiful, natural, gorgeous ambient light color, even in deep conditions. We tested the underwater manual white balance in various conditions and depths, and we're very pleased to report that even in excess of 70 feet, the color coming straight out of this camera looks great. With 3 white balance banks and a very easy to execute procedure, A7S III is one of the top picks for all-around wide-angle natural light video. A helpful feature found on this camera that makes it easier to frame shots is the clear image zoom. When activated, the camera allows for a digital zoom up to a 1.5 times crop of the sensor. While you're shooting, it acts just like a zoom lever on a camcorder. This makes it super simple when you're set up on a tripod and framing a macro critter. Then you can just activate a little zoom for a slightly better composition rather than trying to move your whole rig closer and potentially blow the shot. You can also use this feature to make a sequence of medium to tight shots without losing any depth of field or even having to refocus. We've done something similar in the past with older Sony cameras by using their Super 35 crop mode, and it's a really nice little trick when shooting macro. There might be a little bit of controversy around this topic simply because when you do this, the sensor actually dips below its actual 4K resolution. Sony uses a proprietary algorithm to upscale the difference in resolution in camera while still shooting in 4K. We took a hard look at our own footage using both clear image zoom and not, and we could not notice a quality difference, so we think it's great to use. The next time we need to shoot some underwater video, the Sony A7S III is at the top of our list. Sony clearly designed this thing to be video-centric with a 12 megapixel sensor that's all about producing low noise, high ISO results in low light environments. Its small body size, 4K 120 specs, excellent low light and dynamic range detail, and gorgeous ambient light white balance color at depth make it the clear choice for the best all-around pick for underwater mirrorless video. While the lower resolution 12 megapixel sensor might make it awesome for video, it's also what keeps us from recommending this camera for anyone looking to primarily shoot stills. The Panasonic GH5 has been an underwater video workhorse since it came out. It was the first mirrorless camera capable of shooting 4K 60p, and it was the camera to beat for a long time. Many pro-level productions use this camera for broadcast and cinema requirements. By today's contemporary standards though, 4K 60p is kind of a quaint maximum video spec. It's really more of a requirement for any camera at this point rather than a standout feature. The white balance looks good at depth, which is another large part of why this camera became so widely popular. Recently, the GH5 II and the GH6 were both announced. The new lower price point of the GH5 II at only $1699 makes it a solid bargain camera and a tried and true, reliable 4K 60p micro four thirds sensor mirrorless video option. The details are still unavailable at this time on the GH6, so stay tuned for an update on that when we learn more later this year. The GH5 has been out for a while, but that doesn't take away from its great looking video capabilities that can be had for a relative bargain compared to other 4K 60p capable cameras. If you've got the cash, the Sony A7S III is the clear choice for the ultimate video rig, but if you're looking for a budget mirrorless video camera to shoot great looking 4K 60p, Panasonic GH5, or one of its successors, is a great way to go. There are also a lot of other mirrorless cameras that didn't quite make our top picks, but are still totally viable for underwater use. All these additional cameras are either just not as widely supported by housing manufacturers, or they're just straight up out-spec'd by our other top picks in the same category. But just because these cameras aren't top picks doesn't mean they won't work underwater. So if you'd like to learn more about any of these cameras and how they stack up against our favorites, just give us a call or send us an email and we'll be happy to answer any of your questions. So we hope you enjoyed this in-depth review of the best mirrorless cameras to shoot underwater in 2021, and we hope that you learned everything that you need to know about which of these cameras is potentially best for you. If you want to learn more, if you want to see more sample images and video content, check out the companion article to this video on backscatter.com, which is linked directly in the description. If you're ready to order your camera rig, or if you have more questions, or if you just want to geek out with us, give us a call. Our team here at Backscatter are all active divers who have extensive experience with every camera in this video and more. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We honestly love connecting with our thousands of customers worldwide who depend on us for their underwater imaging needs. Buying your underwater camera gear from us here at Backscatter really means a lot to us. It really helps support us and it keeps us making more of this video content. Keep in mind, we ship internationally every day and we have the world's largest in-stock inventory of underwater photo and video gear, plus a premier warranty service center to back it all up. So thanks for watching. I'm Robin from Backscatter signing off, and happy shooting.